Among the most feared figures in medieval times, none is as enigmatic or maligned as the executioner. Dressed in black, his visage frequently concealed by a somber hood, he represents the silent manifestation of mortality, the ultimate harsh conclusion to a criminal's existence. He is the specter of the marketplace, the individual tasked with administering the axe and the noose. Yet labeling him solely as a beast or a ruthless killer overlooks the essence completely. The medieval executioner did not operate as an independent agent of force. He functioned strictly as a state employee, a government functionary. He embodied the last unavoidable enforcement of legal authority. This contradiction defined his life, indispensable to all, yet reviled by all. Society sought retribution, and in an era where justice was a public, violent display, he was the ultimate tool for it. Without him, the rulers and judiciary's power amounted to mere empty phrases. He gave the law its visceral form, rendering it palpable and alarming. He served as the primary barrier, a ceaseless caution against unlawful acts. Despite this crucial public role, he faced exclusion, marked as an outcast. The community that relied on his role cast him aside, devoid of acceptance. His profession rendered him deemed impure or disgraced by mere connection to it. He was an artisan in a bleak profession, typically assuming the position from his father and fated to transfer it to his son. He was a provider who needed to sustain his household, even if it required enduring the constant presence of the scaffold. To grasp this individual, we must transcend the blade and the ominous headgear. We need to trace his routine across an ordinary day in his unconventional, solitary, and essential existence. Though the public spectacle was the most intense and prominent aspect of the executioner's duties, it was by a significant margin the least frequent. For each individual he condemned to the gallows or the block, he faced countless others through alternative, non-lethal methods. His role encompassed a harrowing list of government-approved punishments, with nearly all tasks focused on causing suffering rather than ending lives. The role of the torturer outweighed executions in frequency within his responsibilities. Under medieval law, obtaining a confession was essential for a conviction, and the executioner served as the state's appointed authority for securing it. This was not arbitrary violence, it was a deliberate, structured process. He required mastery over a cruel method of anguish, possessing sufficient anatomical knowledge to cause intense distress without prematurely ending the prisoner's life before obtaining their admission. His workspace contained the repugnant instruments of his occupation, the frame for elongating limbs, the clamps for damaging fingers, and the steel shoe for fracturing leg bones. His routine also included enforcing physical chastisements in the open space of the village. This served as the primary aspect of his occupation. Was a burglar subjected to lashes by the legal system? The hangman secured the prisoner to the stake and administered the sanctioned 100 strikes using a scourge or switch. Was a heretic destined to bear the stigma of a hot iron? The executioner reheated the metal in the fire pit until it turned crimson and etched the symbol of disgrace onto their skin. In select scenarios, the penalty entailed dismemberment, loss of a limb for pilfering, or a sensory organ for illicit hunting, a definitive physical testament to guilt. Apart from the trial and the platform, his tasks encompassed the city's most detested roles, assignments shunned by those of dignity. He frequently served as the municipal slaughterer, entrusted with eliminating the remains of deceased livestock. His roles included maintaining public toilets, capturing feral canines, or removing waste from underground chambers. Merging his sanctioned responsibilities with menial labor reinforced his exclusion from society. To civic perception, the individual overseeing lawbreakers and the one managing refuse shared identical roles. The sun ascended beyond the urban defenses, mirroring the routine of common tradesmen. However, for the executioner, a day without an execution order meant no respite. It was a day filled with an alternate form of grim routine, one that reinforced the deep, suffocating truth of his social solitude. His initial morning task wasn't meals, but upkeep. His implements were both a duty and a weight. In a cramped, hidden space beyond the watchful gaze of villagers, he labored. The substantial, wide-bladed executioner's blade required constant corrosion prevention, its edge refined to a sharp edge using a coarse grinding stone. A single, flawless strike identified a skilled operator. A failed tactic could shift onlookers into an angry assembly. The hanging apparatus's straps were scrutinized for damage or deterioration. The torture device's parts were lubricated and verified for functionality. This task demanded mastery, albeit in an art defined by suffering and demise. An afternoon could be devoted to training. In his secluded backyard, he practiced his lethal craft. He could employ a pole, a substantial cabbage, or an animal like a calf, furnished by officials for this objective, to refine the decisive strike. His training stemmed from duty, not a thirst for violence. Accuracy was his sole barrier against the crowd's disdain. The genuine burden of his role manifested more through the surrounding hush than through his tasks. His residence was intentionally secluded, frequently constructed beyond the urban boundaries, close to the execution ground or waste areas. When he required provisions, he avoided the vendor tables. The meat vendor declined to supply him. The baker ignored his presence. He could have a tailored agreement where a seller would deposit a package at a set location, or his spouse, burdened by the same affliction, would absorb the murmured jeers and sidelong glances from fellow buyers. Residents would divert their route to avoid proximity to him. Young ones would cease conversation and stare as he approached. He existed as a taboo presence within his surroundings. A tranquil day for the executioner thus transformed into a drawn-out, exhausting meditation on exclusion, a persistent reminder that though his hands bore no guilt, society would forever brand him as corrupt. A single day of execution turned the executioner from a secluded pariah into the fearsome focus of a public spectacle. This was not a swift, methodical process concealed within prison confines. It functioned as a meticulously planned civic spectacle, a harsh homily addressed to the entire populace, with the executioner serving as its chief minister. A municipal representative would visit his residence bearing an official execution order. A municipal representative would visit his residence bearing an official execution order. This was his lawful permit, the paper distinguishing his state-approved action from regular homicide. Armed with the subpoena, he initiated his arrangements. The platform, or hangman's frame, in the central square required inspection for stability. The slab, a sturdy wooden segment, needed precise alignment. The central activity was the march. The executioner, typically clad in a distinct hue such as crimson or ebony to denote his role, escorted the sentenced individual from the jail to the execution site. This was a slow, purposeful procession along the city's primary thoroughfares. The church bells rang a melancholic cadence. The gathering, comprising adults and youth, where this event served as both a festival and an ethical teaching, would stand along the path, mocking, interceding, or pelting the detainee. The executioner's duty required a stoic demeanor, unaffected by the turmoil nearby, an unyielding emblem of judicial authority. Upon reaching the platform, the ceremony peaked. The detainee was permitted to utter a few final words, a confession, a plea, or a last assertion of innocence. The executioner remained nearby, unemotional. His gestures were refined and exact. In case of hanging, he would position the rope with precision, ensuring the loop rested correctly to expedite the end. If the method required decapitation, he would situate the prisoner at the platform, possibly securing their hair. The concluding, agonizing instant arrived. As silence enveloped the assembly, he would lift his weapon. This marked the ultimate trial of his proficiency and composure. A solitary precise blow signified a successful outcome. A miscalculation, an awkward strike demanding multiple attempts, spelled professional ruin. It could shift the crowd's grim curiosity into violent outrage, prompting them to rush the gallows, viewing the flawed act as celestial condemnation. However, a precise strike ensuring the head's removal rendered his role complete. He would then present the severed head. A grim testament affirming legal retribution had been exacted. The executioner was an artisan, judged by the quality of his implements, like any artisan. His inventory was not a haphazard cluster of harsh tools, but an organized selection, each component crafted for a precise and dire function. These were not simply items of timber and metal. They represented intense manifestations of authority, terror, and the fragile threshold between survival and demise. The most recognizable instrument eternally tied to the executioner was the blade. Yet it contrasted sharply with the blade a carpenter would wield. The executioner's weapon was a deliberately designed apparatus, weighty, with an extended shaft for a decisive dual-handed motion, and a broad, curved edge sharpened to near-perfect accuracy. It was a device of raw physical might, intended to detach the head and spinal column with a single devastating strike. Primarily, the axe was used exclusively for common offenders. Its application was viewed as a more violent and less dignified method of demise. For aristocrats, the executioner's blade functioned as an alternative. Differing from combat blades, this armament was bulky, double-handed, and tapered at the end for non-piercing purposes. This was a precision instrument for beheading, engineered for a single, forceful incision. Being executed with a blade was deemed an elite's right, offering a more dignified and less brutal end. A swordsman adept at executions was in high demand, frequently moving between towns to offer his expertise for substantial pay. Naturally, his collection extended well beyond head-chopping implements. In cases of hanging, the prevalent method of capital punishment, his main device was the noose. He needed mastery of knots, adept at securing a noose that constricted swiftly and, if he exercised compassion, fractured the neck for immediate demise instead of prolonged suffering. For minor penalties that constituted his routine tasks, he employed a separate array of devices. His assortment included scourges and maces, ranging from basic leather straps to the dreadfully effective cat-o'-nine-tails, each crafted to impose varied levels of torment. His branding irons bore inscriptions of criminal symbols, a T for thief, say, which he warmed in a mobile furnace until they flared crimson. In the dim, sealed room where he carried out his torturer's role, he wielded the most dreaded implements: the creaking rack, the crushing hand presses, and the harrowing metal tongs, all engineered to erode resolve before the scaffold's arrival. The final strike of the blade or the drop of the guillotine did not conclude the executioner's duty. It only intensified his condemnation. The cost of his role was not in the wages from the municipal funds, but in a lifetime of complete societal exclusion. He represented the pinnacle of societal rejection, a person whose mere presence invoked fear. This was not casual contempt. It was an institutionalized label of moral disgrace. His participation in sanctioned violence and proximity to corpses rendered him socially unclean. This mark was considered highly infectious, an impurity that could not be removed. This religious isolation expressed itself through countless daily indignities. In the marketplace, traders avoided accepting coins from his grip. He had to set them on the counter, and they would gather them into a vinegar basin for purification before handling. In the tavern, the mug he drank from remained exclusively his, isolated from others, and no one would risk sharing a bench with him. In the church, he was frequently barred from the main entrance alongside the faithful. He was forced to access a private, narrow gate, standing apart from the respectable community. The worst aspect of this affliction lay in its generational transmission. The stigma transferred between genders, from male to male, female to female. His partner endured the same marginalization, avoided by the town's female population. His children had no alternative but to inherit the grim legacy, as artisans refused to mentor them. His daughters endured the most devastating destiny. They were deemed incompatible with marriage. No honorable baker or farmer would let his son wed the executioner's daughter, dreading the stigma could tarnish his own bloodline. This compelled executioner households to form alliances within their own ranks, resulting in isolated lineages of pariahs that endured across centuries. He symbolized the society's most abhorrent demands, a mere component in the machinery of punishment. Yet this burden accompanied them daily, not through wealth, but through the erosion of their dignity. The executioner represents a major paradox in history, an individual who was crucial to societal structure, yet reviled. He was the unglamorous cog in the justice system that few wanted to acknowledge, yet its absence would bring the whole mechanism to a standstill. He converted the theoretical notion of law into the stark, tangible reality of iron and ropes, rendering the effects of wrongdoing palpable for all. Yet this vital role exacted an unbearable personal toll. In serving to enforce societal norms, he and his kin were expelled, condemned to a lifelong stigma. He personified a profound hypocrisy, a community that sought the safety his deeds ensured, yet rejected the individual who carried them out, shifting its shared guilt onto a single cloaked figure. Ultimately, the medieval executioner's image lingers in our shared consciousness as it reflects society's hidden shadows. He compels us to face a harsh reality. That stability frequently relies on deeds people of integrity avoid doing, or at least don't admit to. He symbolizes the transfer of brutality, the unwelcome requirement that sustains the legal system. His narrative extends beyond a grim insight into a savage history. It serves as an enduring and disquieting reflection on the cost of fairness and the fragile boundary between the upright individual and the marginalized. He embodies the specter of legal authority, and even in today's ostensibly advanced society, this specter lingers irrevocably.